SM, the Media Project. Driven by data. Driven by technology. Driven by community development. Driven by the need to get results for your project. SM Graves Associates, delivering real estate development to you, including project management and pre-development services with a keen focus on delivering community-oriented projects. We build profitable projects that respond to the needs of your neighborhood. Join the SMG family. Find us at smgravesassociates.com.
Good evening, our Innovato2 fans. The Innovato2 crew from the wilds of Vermont are here to speak with you. That's right. We are here for another Innovato2 podcast. With me in the virtual studio, before we introduce our guests, are my co-hosts. First, Will Jeffries up in the Queen City, Burlington, Vermont. What's going on, man?
Trying to stay dry in Burlington, Vermont. Vermont Center for Emerging Technologies today.
All right, you're a VSAT. Cool. And Ryan Munn over in the Junction.
Yes, I'm here.
Trying
to stay dry in the home office. And and don't forget you, Scott M. Graves.
Scott, and yours truly, Scott M. Graves, here in Rutland on the other side of central Vermont from Ryan. This is a weird day because the weather is actually doing more or less the same thing in all three of our regions, which is, when you live in a mountainous area, that's very rare, actually.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to jump right in and introduce our guest because I'm really excited to have her with us and hear another really interesting founder story in Vermont. So with us today is Bryn, who's the CEO and co-founder of Biobe, and also a PhD candidate in the Complex Systems and Data Science program at the University of Vermont, and a National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellow. So really curious and excited to pick that apart. Thank you so much for joining us today, Bryn.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
So I want to start off with kind of an easy one. If you would share with us a little bit more about your background and what kind of brought you to Vermont, what led up to you coming to Vermont, and we'll go from there.
Fantastic. Well, again, I'm super excited to be here. My interest in technology started when I was really young. I remember even before I was 10, I would be sitting and cross-legged at the computer playing games and playing on early versions of Microsoft Office and Publisher, organizing things around the house, creating documents, and organizing information. It really excited me. It really made me excited for what the potential of technology could do, especially with large amounts of information. And so as I continued getting older, even going into high school, I got really curious about engineering and identifying different ways that you can build amazing technologies using really simple toolkits or really low-cost items. And that really pumped me up because the potential of low-cost sensors and what you can do specifically in the health framework, which is always an area that even starting in those early years when I was just getting into computers, I was like, that's where we could really apply it. How can we live more well lives? How can we feel better and feel happier and feel healthier? And how can we use sensors to do that? And so fast forward many years, continuing to study those sensors, went to my undergrad, got a degree, a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science, continuing to learn about those sensors, developing biosensors for specifically mental health, but doing some stuff in the physical health space as well. And then decided, I was living abroad at the time after my bachelor's and said, I want to go back for my PhD and I want to continue exploring the space. I want to continue doing research. I had already engaged in a lot of research during my undergraduate and figured this is where we can create technologies that can truly have impact. This is where we can create technologies that can be translated to real life patients, to real life individuals. And so, long story, relatively short, that's what brought me to Vermont to pursue my graduate program in complex systems and data science and really create technologies using sensors and really with the focus on healthcare and how we can live better lives.
That's we probably don't have to tell you, Bryn, that the percentage of people who enter fully into research that then become entrepreneurs is a pretty small percentage, which makes you unique, among many other things that may make you wonderfully unique. So tell us a little bit about that. You know, why you left sort of the confines of research for the punishing experience of starting a business.
Yeah. Well, I'm extremely thankful for where that leap into entrepreneurship is starting. And I think that has really helped me enter this space. As you say, it's very daunting, especially coming from academia. Thankfully, within my role at UVM and with my role as a National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellow, I've had a little bit more flexibility, you might say, in choosing what kind of courses, in choosing what kind of connections, in choosing what kind of technologies I really wanted to focus on. But I knew even prior to coming to UVM that I specifically didn't want to just focus on publications. This wasn't a decision I made during my PhD. This was a decision I made going into my PhD, knowing that if I came out of my dissertation and didn't have a tool that was actually potentially going to help people, I had wasted my time. And I truly feel that has helped me, one, through my PhD and those long nights of writing papers and being behind the computer coding incredible things, but really, really late at night with not a ton of sleep. It's helped me with those nights, but it's also helped me when I've been preparing pitch decks or when I've been trying to do some financial models or talking to advisors or doing market research. So I think that kind of motivation to help individuals has helped me branch into this space.
I really relate to what you were just saying, Bryn, and the need to have that real, tangible reason that you are doing the work that you are doing. And I'm curious, you said you went into your PhD with that in mind, that this is what you wanted to find. And was there a light bulb moment or a connection that was when that spark happened?
That's a great question, Will. Yeah, that's a great question. So in terms of that spark of wanting to make something that was meaningful or that was tangible, I think that started even when I was quite young. I was already a little bit entrepreneurial. I remember I used to write stories for my family. And I didn't just want them to read them. I wanted them to buy a library card so that they could check out my stories, thus making a small business for them to be able to just see how I was being a creative child, but then getting something in return. And so I think that spark for entrepreneurship probably started much earlier than my spark for figuring out what Biobe was going to be or what the technologies I wanted to build were going to be. Even in college, in my creative pursuits, I've always been a little bit of a painter. And in college, I had an art business. But all of that return that I was getting on that art business, doing commissions or selling those pieces, went right back into buying the many supplies and insatiable urge I had for more supplies and to do more mediums and try new things. So again, in terms of entrepreneurial spark, it's been an itch, I would say, that I've been scratching for a while. But really the spark for mental health specifically, I think started a long, long time ago. And it started, I think, when I was young. And I was one of those children that was trying to navigate my own mental health and my own well-being and trying to navigate what it meant to be in this world and to face mortality as every child or adult or maybe never you have to face is your own mortality. And I think it can be a really hard thing to do. And so creating tools that really address this educational component to coming of age, the educational component to having good coping skills, the educational component to understanding what it means to live a good and happy and healthy life, not only physically, but also emotionally, has always been an area that I've been drawn to because I know I could benefit, or I could have benefited from more tools at that time. And
How has your, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'll close it off there and say, and I continue to see that. I continue to see it when I go to high schools or I go to middle schools and I talk to individuals saying, there are tools out there, but we could do more. There are amazing, innovative companies contributing to this space, but we could do more. We're still seeing staggering statistics. And so that really continues to ignite that spark, as you mentioned, Will, of why I got into this space, but why I continue to be in this space. Go ahead, Scott.
Well, having that penchant for storytelling, whether that's the written word or painting, how is that sort of influenced the development of the company, Biobe?
I think creativity and being able to express your ideas is incredibly important. If you can get it on paper, if you can get it on a canvas, if you can get it in halfway words, in halfway paper on a canvas, in halfway Canva, where you're digitally designing a mock-up or you're digitally designing a table, if you can translate what your thoughts are or what your team's thoughts are or what your customers are saying or what your stakeholders are saying, that kind of creativity is how you solve the problems. It's how you define the problems. And so I really think this mix of mediums that I've really been continuing to craft and that inspire me help me to articulate those ideas, help me to identify commonalities, and also really pleases me. And so whether it's designing amazing figures for publications that I know will increase reach because people want to see cool figures, people want to see data that they understand, or if it's designing a poster or it's designing a piece of art that really speaks to me, I think these are all examples of how we can just bring our thoughts to the real world.
Yeah, that's really insightful, and it shows that you've taken all your experiences with you and continued to evolve this. Looking at your history, it looks like you've traveled around quite a bit. You mentioned you were abroad for a while. You went to university in Colorado, right?
Correct.
And so, what ultimately? What was your choice to come to Vermont, or were there others on the list? And as you narrowed that down, how did you come to pursue your PhD in Vermont at UVM? Was it people? Was it culture? Was it some part of the idea that you'd already formed and maybe found some specific resources that were going to make that happen for you?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ryan. And honestly, the answer is a bit of a combination of all of those. And so I definitely had several prospects of different universities that I could have done research at and probably been very fulfilled. They were doing really cool work. They were funded. They were willing to fund me in ways that I felt were appropriate. And they were potentially really good options. And I was in a really awesome opportunity to be able to decide what was going to be my best next step. And so in looking at different options in Oregon or abroad or back in Colorado or here in Vermont, I really wanted to weigh what was going to make me feel happy. I study mental health. I create tools within mental health. I really value my own mental health. And one thing that Vermont offers uniquely is nature that I don't think is really accessible elsewhere. Having lived in Norway and lived in a very, very rural area. The town I was living in had less than 200 individuals living there. And seeing what you can think of and be inspired by when you aren't distracted, I suppose specifically for me, some people love cities, and I think that's wonderful. But for me, I like to get out there. And I think Vermont offers a lot of opportunities to get out there. But it's also very connected. I can get to the airport within 20 minutes, which for me, with growing a business, that has been incredibly important. I can't tell you the amount of times I've had to take early flights. And if that was a longer distance or a little bit more traffic, that would have been a lot more challenging. And so I really get to live on the edge. And that was something I wanted to think about as I was choosing graduate programs. So that definitely was something on my mind and going into that. But I also, as I was meeting with different individuals and potentially different collaborators, I met two of my co-founders, Ryan and Ellen McGinnis, as well as had a lot of email correspondences with Nick Cheney. He was currently on paternity leave at that time, but really immediately felt a spark among the team. I really loved the research they were doing with the screener they were developing, now turned to Oak. But they also were very value aligned with me. And I could speak all day about how that's really important and how you have to have a team that meshes well. But when you know, just like when you know that it's not a fit, you definitely know. And it felt right. And so while there was many things that brought me to Vermont, the people, the beautiful nature, opportunities, the connectivity, I would definitely say it was multifaceted, and I'm happy to be here.
It's really, it's really important to, have gone through that diligence for yourself, get to know yourself, and, to find the connection. It's what brought me back to Vermont when I went out of the country and was thinking about where to come to when I returned. I ended up landing here for a lot of the same reasons, that rural nature yet connectedness that we have here. So it's really really exciting opportunity. And I'm curious too what your experience has been since you've gotten here now, in the startup ecosystem specifically, and working through that launch of an innovative nonprofit entrepreneurial venture.
Well, I'll just clarify. We are for profit.
You are for profit. Okay, I'm sorry. I was conflating the org.
But there is amazing mental health nonprofits here in Vermont. We have Bright Futures, and we also have NAMI Vermont, both directly involved with either creating and writing the textbooks for pediatricians or creating amazing advocacy and outreach. So we do have amazing mental health nonprofits here in Vermont, while Biobe is not a nonprofit. But the experience here has been absolutely amazing. I feel incredibly fortunate to see such a connected, but I'm going to use the word infantile ecosystem, in that you see it growing right before your eyes. Not infantile in that it's not trying to be connected or that it doesn't have resources, but that it's new and it's exciting and it's growing. And people have this energy about it that I feel excited about too. Because you see how a new place could build new opportunities from the ground up and maybe avoid some of the places where things went wrong, especially when I go and I do different activities or even accelerators in larger cities or national programs. I see a lot of unique offerings that Vermont brings with its ecosystem, specifically with being able to be neighbors while also being able to connect to a variety of resources. We have not just a few people here. We have people that do a variety of things. Will, I see you have ideas and thoughts, and I'd love to hear them.
Imagine a vibrant region that embraces innovative technology and systems, allowing individuals and businesses to grow and thrive within the natural and cultural lifestyle of Vermont. Imagine the Black River Innovation Campus. Our community includes business and technology programming, co-working and technology tools, and other exciting experiences that are quickly creating an outsized impact to our little corner of northern New England here in Springfield, Vermont. PC Mag rates Springfield, Vermont number 8 for the best work-from-home cities in the U.S. Join us in Vermont. Begin your journey at bricvt.org.
Oh, it was just a thought for a word, and I wondered if it resonated with you, nascent.
Yes, definitely. And I know Lauren Bass, she also kind of identifies with that word in describing this environment. And I think it's really exciting. And so specifically, I've really enjoyed being a part of Launch VT, which is an amazing accelerator here. And they are just about to announce the cohort. So I encourage anyone who's maybe listening to this to go and check this new cohort out, because it was extremely influential for us to be a part of the program last year and to then end up winning the program and being able to use those funds to support our development over the last year, which has really been instrumental to some really exciting things we're building. Go ahead, Will.
Bryn, I have two things I'd like to ask. One is, what are the best ways of using digital technology, most useful ways when we consider using it in mental health services? And then maybe conversely, talk about some of the ways where it's either less useful or maybe even harmful. I don't know. I'm not making any assumptions there, but what's the maybe give us the dichotomy between the two.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And I think I definitely don't have the answers. I think I have some ideas and I have some thoughts and I have some opinions, but I think that space is evolving so quickly. How we use digital devices is such a also broad question, because digital devices can be sensors on your body, like this Oura ring I'm wearing. It can be your phone that's sitting next to you. It can be a smart tablet within the home. It can be a connected ecosystem completely online with no physical hardware. And so how we describe digital integration with healthcare, and especially young children, which is the population we're focusing on now and to begin with, I think we have a lot to learn, and I think it starts with asking parents. That's really where we've gotten the best insights, is asking parents directly, how do you want to interact with these systems? Asking pediatricians, is this daunting? Do you like this? Is this confusing? These are questions that I think start to bridge to that question. But I think we still have a lot to learn on how screens and how sensors and how web applications that are completely hardware free can truly integrate most successfully. And I'm excited to see how that space evolves.
Very exciting. And I just wanted to add a quick plug too. You mentioned Launch VT and the upcoming cohort reveal. And Lauren, this past week, actually mentioned that there will be a Meet the Cohort event on April 2nd at 4 p.m. at Zero Gravity Craft Brewers in Burlington. So anyone who's interested, you can find out more on the Launch VT website. But as an exciting event plug coming up.
So now there's your deadline to get this out, Scott.
It is yeah, thanks, Will. Well, it is. I mean, at least if it was on April 1st, it could be like, oh, April Fools, but it's actually April 2nd. So we'll get this out on time.
So I want to kind of let you maybe elaborate a little bit on, what you're talking about as far as like getting the feedback, right? I mean, if I were to sort of distill your answer to what Scott asked, it's really on the positive side of like what the right thing to do is iterate, right? And what the wrong thing to do is assume. And so maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that, maybe some things that you've learned in that process where, maybe you or you observed some other assumption that you were able to sort of debunk, and how this iterative process is really a growing, informative, dynamic experience.
I love this question, Ryan, and I'll share a small story that I think really exemplifies this. So when Biobe was just starting out, pre-Biobe, we were still doing research. We were getting amazing grants through the NSF and NIH to continue supporting our research. Let's even talk pre-Bryn to the original foundational research, where this assessment was starting to be cultivated. Using 10 minutes and using wearable sensors, how can we further give voice to young children in mental health assessment? That was the research question. And it continued to be evolved. And we study different populations, and then we'll fast forward. I come in, I continue to study. We collect another sample of children and continue to show that these biomarkers are relevant. And then I say, okay, great. Now let's translate it. So then we go and do the NSF I-Core program. And I love the NSF I-Core program. I could sing from the rooftops about this program in terms of allowing someone to learn about customer discovery and the value of it. And when I first started NSF I4, I was apprehensive. I thought, we've talked to people and this makes sense. People want a screener. Individuals want this because it's great and it's more accurate. We can catch more kids. Who wouldn't want this? There's got to be a market. And so I had all these assumptions. This was about 3 or 4 years ago now. And so then I started the NSF I-Core program, and we started to talk to pediatricians and parents. And while we saw a lot of interest and intrigue in this new screener, without saying anything about the screener, if you know anything about I-Core, you're not allowed to talk about your technology. You're just supposed to kind of get at their pain points, understand where there might be a fit for what you're already building, and maybe not what you're already building. And what we started to hear is, while a screener would be amazing, there was something way more important, something that they needed sooner, a pain point that was greater, something they'd be willing to pay for today. You've heard the story maybe before on any Steve Blank podcast of why I-Core and customer discovery is important. And we experienced this pivot point where we understood that this screener, Oak, is incredibly important and has value and has market, but there is something we can develop sooner. And there's something that we can be able to provide to fill some of those gaps to build our early revenue. And that's where Sprout came in. And I don't want to go a ton into all of our amazing ideas with our products and what we've developed and the iterative designs we've been doing with them, but that's exactly what we have been doing. Because once we realized there was a product we could develop sooner, we immediately started getting focus groups. We immediately started getting additional clinical expertise, and we were able to build on an MVP within 6 months. And that is the product that we're going to be launching later this year. And we have a phased go-to-market strategy. And that's the importance of user-centric design and customer discovery. And though we'll continue to modify and develop this amazing Oak screening system that I do really think has the potential to change fundamentally how we think about mental health, how we identify mental health, I think we have something that could really fill pain points sooner, and we wouldn't have identified that and been able to fill those gaps without that learning process.
And that is a beautiful journey of entrepreneurship and innovation. That is, yes, I would love for more entrepreneurs, for innovators, for researchers to hear that kind of story and really see how important it is to go through that type of journey that you described. With I-Core, with taking your assumptions, with testing those in the real world and asking the questions that can lead you to surprising opportunities.
I couldn't agree more, Will. I couldn't agree more. And that's why I'm always happy to share that story. And that's where I think storytelling as a founder and opportunities like this are extremely important. A lot of time it's about what's your market or is this feasible? But it's less about what you've heard from customers directly. If every pitch deck was just what were the last 10 conversations you've had this week with people that will be using your product or paying for it, I don't know. I think it would go different. And so I really like that mindset. I think it keeps me on my toes. I think it keeps our team on our toes because you never know when that next pivot might be because it's more of an opportunity to continue to be surprised.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I've been on teams where that was the process. Every week was, what were your last 10 conversations, the conversations you had with clients this week? What were the highlights of that? The quotes that stood out that resonated with specific hypotheses that you were learning more about or what surprised you? But Scott, it sounded like you had something to build on.
Yeah. I was recently in a conversation with an elected in a neighboring state. So I can feel free to talk about this. I won't say the state, but in a neighboring state. So folks that fund public mental health services and talking about technology platforms and their use in the segment as primarily using language that suggested, and we got on the subject of, it's not to me, this is now my personal opinion. It's not a good way of thinking when you're funding mental health services to think like we're going to leverage the digital technology as we can to cut costs, right? As opposed to how do we simply use it to enhance either better delivery of services, better delivery of diagnostics, whatever the applicable is for that platform. You must have given this some thought, right? In forming your own company, you have some strong opinions there on like, hey, this isn't about utilizing the digital technology to cut labor or to cut costs. It's about enhancing and building capacity.
Yeah, this is a really important topic, Scott. And I think at the root of it, it really comes back to me about connectivity and what you can offer an ecosystem. Fiscal value of like returning dollars to their pockets is fantastic. And you can make arguments all day that childhood mental health concerns are extremely expensive because those arguments are valid and there's a ton of research supporting that. It incurs incredible costs on the family and larger health ecosystems year over year and throughout their entire lives. So you can create a ton of arguments, very valid, reasonable, evidence-based arguments about the value-based care opportunities that additional digital screening tools or digital tools that support transition of care can bring to an organization. But I think really making sure that we're thinking of collaborative care models and how tools not only cut costs by making sure that an individual isn't being seen over and over again through their life about something that could have been intervened on in their first 10 or 15 years. But it's really about connecting those dots. Right now, there's difficulties in connecting the dots between a pediatrician's office and a child psychologist, or a pediatrician's office and just coping skills at home. Those are dots that need to be connected and have a ton of value associated with it. That you could talk in terms of dollars, but you could talk in terms of peace of mind and the amount of hours returned to your day of not having to worry about these concerns or feeling more ready to take on other challenges other than these concerns, things you might be experiencing day in, day out with behavioral challenges. And so I think there's a lot to say in terms of that space of how do you quantify this? How do you make sure you show value? How do you make sure you're showing that digital tools have a place and a home here? And there's a lot of storytelling I think you could do there as well.
And you guys are characterizing your solution. It's not a diagnostic. It's a preventative.
Correct. We aren't a standalone diagnostic. A human should be in the loop. We never want to take the place of a clinician because a clinician with their expertise and background is incredibly important. They are vital to this entire operation. And so we're trying to make their life and the parent's life easier. If a parent is the number one reporter and entirely relied on to be that observer, to be that reporter, that's a lot of pressure. And if that pediatrician is also the only one kind of making those decisions, oftentimes a lot of individuals are involved in these discussions. This is a simplification, but that's a lot of pressure. And so creating tools that connect these individuals making these decisions, tools that can support, that can recommend, that can provide psychoeducation, things that you don't have to read through an entire textbook to get exactly the kind of tidbit or tool that you're trying to try out that's accessible. That's really where we're trying to position ourselves.
I often like to say, to myself and other founders, if you think you have a really good idea, you've got to go find other people working on it, whether they're your competition or they're your new partners. And so the same thing, it's really about, in that context, it's sort of like blinders, but it's the same overall context of silos, right? We get into our own silos of expertise, our own silos in an industry. And breaking down those silos, both across institutions and communities, but also even within a care group is the big challenge. Even one individual care group can have these silos where maybe a parent doesn't quite feel comfortable reaching out to the doctor. They're more comfortable with the social worker, or the social worker is more comfortable getting into the weeds with the doctor, but doesn't feel comfortable seeing things in the same way to the parent. And so how can we bridge those gaps? How can we break down those silos? And that's where, the conversation about abundance versus scarcity, right? Like, this is an investment. It's not about cost cutting or cost savings. It's really about how do we invest and focus on outcomes and results, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Ryan. And I love what you're sharing here. And for me, I think it really boils down to meeting people where they're at. And how can we continue to build tools like that? And I'm really new in this space. And I think Biobe is new in this space. I think we have so much to learn. But I think that excitement that we have on the team for how can we meet people where they're at? We see these challenges and we're excited. We're passionate. I'm passionate. I wake up in the morning and I think about this and I think about the potential. And so I think I love what you're bringing up there of how can we break down these silos and create approachable tools that move beyond just typical conversations, but really create value in unique ways.
That's incredible. And so I want to start to wind down. I don't want to, keep people too long on any one podcast. We love to share the story, but it sounds like
Keep them wanting more.
Hey, yeah, we want to keep them wanting more. And we want more. Frankly, I'm really excited to follow your work and learn more about as you develop and release, your next phases. Share with us a little bit about where you're at today and what folks might look for and how they might follow your progress over the next over 2025.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Ryan. Well, if you're curious about learning more about Biobe, our underlying publications that are supporting this work, or any of our updates, if you're curious about our TEDx talk or even recent pitches that are available online, you can check that all out at biobe.org. You can also follow us on LinkedIn by looking up Biobe Inc. And we're really excited this year. We'll be launching our first product. I shared a little bit about that story of how that first product, it's called Sprout, came to life. And we're really excited to start sharing that more broadly outside of our research groups and user-centric development. We're really excited to really take this next step. And so we encourage anyone to follow our journey, get involved, ask questions, be curious, and stay connected with us.
Awesome. And to correct my earlier pre-revenue was kind of where my head was at. Your pre-revenue, you've been funded through various avenues up to now. But as you get a product out, you'll be starting to generate revenue, I would assume, and potentially seeking investment in the next year or two.
Yeah, we're definitely open to any and all conversations, especially those that feel value aligned within the pediatric mental health space and are excited about how we can use evidence-based practices, even wearable technology to help us identify early signs of mental health concerns or identify evidence-based treatment or intervention strategies. That's the space we're excited about. If you're excited about this space, we'd love to chat.
Excellent. Sounds like a great opportunity for any impact-focused investor or advisor.
And that sounds like a great place for us to wrap up our podcast.
Bryn Lofness of Biobe, co-founder and CEO. Thanks for coming on the Innovato2 podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Find Innovato2 on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and subscribe to Interchain Live on YouTube for video podcasts. Innovato2 is a collaboration of Interchain Live and M the Media Project.